So it's the end of day one over at CTA State Council, and it's 9 o'clock. And before I tucked in for bed, I wanted to go over and check in about what happened in the afternoon. There was first general session in the morning, and I posted a video up from David Goldberg, and I understand that I'll probably have to redo that because the sound was really bad. I apologize, David. The afternoon is taken over with committee meetings, and so the committee I'm on is the Assessment and Testing Committee, and there's been a lot going on there because of the new assessments and also getting away from the old ones, and a lot of it centers around the legislation for doing that, which is known as AB 484. There have been there's a lot of information that's been coming out about what the new assessments are going to look like, the field tests for the new assessments are going to look like. So there was a lot of information that was disseminated over at the meeting. And then there also were what are called new business items. And new business items are items, usually they originate from folks outside of the committee, although they can come from folks inside the committee. So if somebody has a new business item, they will go and submit it, and then it gets referred out to the committee under whose purview it's covered. So I'm going to talk about some of the informational stuff that's going to be coming out because some of that does need to be shared with members so they know what's coming down. So the first thing that we got was a really great two-page fact sheet over on the SBAC test, and it was really accessible. You can see here, and this was from Dr. Vernon Jerome, who is the one of the staffers that is assigned to the committee, and I'll be posting that up and sharing that with folks because we all have a lot of questions about what's coming down. One of the things they talked about is both a practice test, and then there's a test to get them used to the system and how it reacts, students, and there's going to be some information over about that. Let's see what else. Then, in response to some new business items asking for clarification about various things, they had some responses, and I'll be posting those as well. The first one was there's a lot of question about what happens to schools that are very far along over in PI, say they're PI year 4 or 5 under NCLB, because there will no longer be an API except for high schools, because high schools can generate it from different things other than the CST test. And so the short answer is that they stay frozen in PI, which if they were advancing further along and they were in a bad point and not in safe harbor, and that's got to be a lot of schools because it was getting pretty impossible to go over and meet those percentage requirements under NCLB, since we were just a year out from the 2014 deadline of 100% proficiency in all significant subgroups. That's going to be a lot of folks. The thing is that you won't advance any further along, so you're just kind of stuck there. So it's got a lot of detailed information about kind of the ins and outs of it. I'd be guessing here, but it looks like it features the writing of Patricia Rucker, who is in government relations for CTA, because she has a very strong writing voice. But I would only be guessing at that. And I will say that that's a compliment, Patricia, if you hear this, because she is quite intelligent and witty. So there was also an NBI on opt-out and informing folks about opt-out that had come in over in October that was referred to us. And it had a couple of things that were a little funky about the language. It talked about going over and providing materials to teachers so that they can inform parents of opt-out, as CTA had done with CST testing. And that wasn't exactly what CTA has been doing. They did provide a legal opinion, certainly, under the old CST system, but they've always directed individual teachers to go over and follow district rules that were laid out over about notifying parents of opt-out. And as we have all experienced, districts are very often more hostile about communicating opt-out rights over to parents. And there was also, I brought up the fact that there was some concern that there was going to be some sunsetting of opt-out over with the new testing system, that there were a lot of rumors floating around about that, and it seemed contrary to what I was reading over in the AB 484 emergency regulations that went through recently, because specifically in one section they were once again stating the right to parent opt-out. And this is really important because according to Patricia Rucker, all states are required to have a parent opt-out component. It's up to them to go over and specify how they're going to implement it, because they all have different testing systems that they're doing. And so California does have that with the new testing system. They would need to have it because it's part of ESEA. Whether or not they're doing the CST or some other test, it needs to be there. It's a parental civil right. And what we opted to do in the committee was to go over and to not recommend the MBI, but to the chair is going to direct the legal department to go over and send out a what they call a Thursday memo, looking back over at their legal opinion before under CST and updating it for the new SBAC testing system, and getting that out, so that that would be a piece of communication that would be going out to locals and members. And I think it's probably important for those who are very interested over in the opt-out movement to go over and make sure that they go over and read this and see what CTA Legal is saying, you know, the legislation says, so that you know what sort of legal ground you're on. For those who this is an issue for, and I will admit it's not a primary issue in my concerns over about testing, but I am, I do want to make sure that this right is being allowed and enforced and not being abrogated. If there are problems, because we know there's a long history of districts being hostile to opt-out, and of sometimes giving erroneous legal information to parents about opt-out, or taking other punitive action, that if we're hearing that that's still going on, we might want to go over and revisit this. But as for action, I don't know that we necessarily want to look at individual teachers getting involved over in this, but we need to find an appropriate way to go over and communicate this. Okay, so enough of that. What's the last thing I had? Yes, we were supposed to be revisiting an MBI that was put through about the cost of implementation of the SBAC test and some other questions that had gone through in June. State Council, but we didn't get to that because there was, I mean, this is a pretty full day going over and discussing this. And certainly I think it would be good to go back, and I'm going to make a request that we go over and talk about it over at the next meeting. I also brought up some concerns about, you know, how the data that's going to be gathered from the field testing, how they were going to go over and slice and dice it for validity checks. Just so people know, that there are representatives of teachers from CTA, not staff from CTA, over on the group that is overseeing the setting of the cut scores and some other things that are going on with that. You know, I look forward to hearing what's going on with that, because as we were in the middle of the meeting, or the end of the meeting rather, George Sheridan got up and shared with us that New York State's Teachers Union, the joint AFT-NEA affiliate there, has has divested itself, is pulling back from its agreement to go over and do the implementation of Common Core in New York, and will not participate in that any longer unless they get a 3-year testing moratorium, which is essentially what we're under over in California. And I wanted to repeat that because I ran across some people who are pretty savvy about things who weren't aware. The moratorium is not for 1 year, it's not for 2 years, it's 3 years, there, 3, with the possibility of it being extended if things are not ready, because everybody recognizes we do not have the curriculum yet. We are only in field testing over at this point, and that this will take some time to go over and implement. So that's the good news. The other thing that I enjoyed talking about there is, and you're not going to see any communications out about this, but in the morning when we were having the subcommittee, we had some discussions that were centered around teacher professionalism and control of assessment specifically, because one of the issues that I think has been hurting the teaching profession is the lack of control over our tools, the curriculum, the instruction, and the assessment, and we need to regain control over those things to go over and regain our professional standing, or to gain our professional standing. And so there was a really good discussion, and I think some understanding amongst the committee members there about a path forward. And Shannon Brown from San Juan Unified, which has done a lot of work about teacher development and teacher professionalism, was particularly good at providing, you know, some examples of what had happened over in her district. So that's day one. We've got 2 sessions tomorrow, no committee meetings, but 2 general sessions where we'll be taking votes on various things. And I've got a morning breakfast meeting where we meet with our local groups, our districts, and I'm over in District D, which would be what Capital Service Center essentially, and talk over things. So I'll be checking in then. Thanks, bye.